kind of interesting that Paige made that statement about faith, because the title changed about 15 times for what I was going to be talking about. And I landed on this: we hope in what faith is. Had no idea, hadn't talked with Paige or anything. But we have hope in what faith is. And that's kind of just what we're going to see in Psalm 56 and 57. You're probably wondering, why are we looking at two of them? Because they kind of go hand in hand, and you'll see that the first statement that David makes in both Psalms is the same. And so let me give you a little bit of background about Psalm 56 and 57. Psalms 56 describes the events that took place in 1 Samuel 21. It's that interesting story where David is on the run from King Saul. Saul's wanting to take his life. He's trying to kill him. And he went to Gath. Of all places to go to, he chose Gath. This shows me that sometimes we get it wrong. Because Gath is a Philistine city. It was actually where Goliath was from. So now you can imagine, if you're the dude that took out Goliath and you go to a city, you're going to be known. And they're probably not going to be happy with you. But that's where David went. He gets there, he shows up, people recognize him. That's 1 Samuel 17, 1 Samuel 21. And David, they said this. They said, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him? Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. So David, realizing he's in danger, what does he do? This is his plan. He decides to act like he's losing his mind and he's crazy. He starts drooling on himself and acting like a madman. Like, can you picture that? I can picture you doing it. I've seen some of you do it. I've done it myself, right? We try to dig ourselves out by another crazy thing. Well, they let him go and he escapes and he goes from there. And what Psalm 56 reflects is that fear and pressure that David experiences was very real. He was surrounded by his enemies, and he needed to figure things out. Psalm 57 now describes the events that took place in 1 Samuel chapter 22. So after escaping Gath, after leaving that city, what did David do? He goes and he hides in these caves in Adullam. Later, he would go hide in a cave in Gedi, 1 Samuel 24. So he tended to hide in caves after he left here. He's like, I'm not going to go back to a city, I'm going to go to a cave. And the story is told how Saul, in pursuit of David, ends up spending the night in one of these caves. Now you're thinking to yourself, how could that happen and him not know David was there? Well, these caves were very large, and you could fit a large amount of people, to the point where David was in there with 400 men that were distressed and kind of whatnot. So this was a big cave. Well, when these guys saw that Saul was there, like, hey, David, God delivered Saul into your hand. Let's take him out. And that's when David said, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. And they cut the hem of his garb, and away he goes. And what Psalm 57 shows, David is moving from fear to a place of confident worship. And all that took place while he was hiding. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to examine 6 things that David shows us as to what faith is. Now we have, and David didn't have this, we have Hebrews 11:1, which gives us the definition of what faith is, right? And the writer of Hebrews says this: now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So our faith brings about a substance of what? The things that we hope for. It brings them to life. It's saying, God, show me a butterfly. I don't like butterflies, but show me one. It's saying, God, I'm going to trust you with every aspect of my life, even when I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And so let's examine these 6 things. And the first thing we're going to see in Psalm 56, verses 1 through 4, is we're going to see faith is trusting God when fear is overwhelming. You ever been to that place where you were so afraid that you were overwhelmed? That's where David was. And it says, to the chief musician, set to the silent dove in the distant lands of Michtam of David, when the Philistines captured him in Gath. And this is what David says: be merciful to me. Let that sink in for a minute. David, overwhelmed with fear, cries out for God's mercy. What do you cry out for when you're overwhelmed? Deliverance? The end of this? We could learn from David. We should cry out for mercy. It says, be merciful to me, O God, for man would swallow me up. Fighting all day, he oppresses me. My enemies would hound me all day, for they are many who fight against me, O Most High. Whenever I'm afraid, I will trust in you. In God, I will praise his word. In God, I have put my trust. I will not fear. What can flesh do to me? So again, he starts with this plea for mercy. What I love about this is notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, God, do merciful things for me. He says, God, be merciful to me. You see, that's the key. That's the key to David's faith. David wasn't just trusting God with what God could do. Rather, David was trusting God for who God is, merciful. And he knew that mercy would never change. It's from the foundation of the world who God is. He's merciful. And this understanding of who God is for David enabled him to do something that was extremely important. He was able to be honest with his hurts and his brokenness before the Lord. He said, Lord, be merciful to me. Why? Because there's people around me that want to take me out. I'm overwhelmed. My life is being threatened. I don't know about you, but as I read this, I got that sense that David was just exhausted. Ever been there? You're so afraid, you're so consumed with what's going on around you that you just don't even know how you're going to get up in the morning. And then what happens? You find out that the next day you lose an hour of sleep. And what do? Overwhelmed. David said this, God, I'm going to trust in who you are. As I thought about the times in my life when I was most exhausted, I can link them to the time I was most fearful. Fearful about what was going to happen. And what I found is fear has a way of wearing you out. But yet fear is something that we all face. Nobody is immune to it. So faith, what does it do? Faith doesn't overlook fear. But what faith does is it allows this. It allows the things that we are afraid of, our fears, to collide with who God is. God, I'm afraid, but I need my fear to collide with your mercy. I need my fear to collide with who you are, and I'm going to let there be a wreck at that point. Because sometimes when those two collide, it is difficult and there's friction. So we don't overlook our fear. We let it collide with who God is. And so when faith and God's character collide, or when fear and God's character collide, it causes within us a faith that, like David, should strengthen us to be able to say the same things that David said. Regardless of what's going on around me, God, I will trust you. That's what David said. I will trust you. The word trust here is a very fascinating word. It means this. It means confidence, bold, and to make secure. So what was David saying here? David was saying this. I have a bold confidence in the security of my God. Because that's who he is. So faith does not deny fear. It redirects it towards the nature and the character of the God who loves us. Faith says, Lord, I trust you with the things I'm afraid of, with the things I'm overwhelmed by, because what can man do to me? The second thing, as he keeps going, we see that faith is trusting that God is for you. And he says in verse 5, all day they twist my words, and their tongues are against me for evil. They gather together, they hide, they mark my steps. When they lie in wait for my life, shall they escape by iniquity? In anger cast down the people, O God. You number my wanderings. You put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? When I cry out to you, then my enemies will turn back. This I know, because God is for me. David, with all the pressures everywhere around him, with people watching him, his enemies plotting to take him out, he says, if all I'm going to do is look around, I could be assured of everything that they're doing. I could see the evil that they desire for me. I could see them hiding. I see them marking my steps or looking for opportunities to attack. That was the reality of what David lived in. Well, Jesus would say something to Peter in Luke chapter 22, verses 31 through 32. He says this, he says, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, indeed, Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith should not fail. And when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. You see, we have an enemy who's out there who wants to sift us like wheat. What was told to Cain? Satan is crouching, looking for an opportunity to pounce. We see that all around us. Here, what was at stake? David's reputation, the guy that was going to be king. Now, reputation was pretty much everything you had back then. And so the false accusations could really destroy a leader. But that wasn't even the half of it. David was just terrified in general. Because I think some of the accusations were probably realities. They were rightfully so. David's past may have caught up with him. He was overwhelmed by that. But what's fascinating to me is that this got David to this place where he's able to say, God, you put my tears in your bottle. That every tear that fell from his face, he knew had value. He knew that God in his mercy did not let any tear hit the ground, but he captured it, giving value to what he was going through. Interesting to me when I think about this, because we don't really have tear bottles today, do we? So we'll say things like, well, God catches all my tears in his nail-pierced hands. Doesn't let them go to waste. But when David was writing this, at that time, women had bottles that they would capture tears in. And it was a bottle that, I don't know how big they were, but they say that they had kind of the top wasn't just like a bottle like we think of today. It kind of had almost like a funnel to where your tear would drop into it and drop into the bottle, and they'd capture that and they would keep them. And they weren't just necessarily tears of sorrow, but could also be tears of joy. And so what would happen is when a woman would begin to cry, she would go run and grab her bottle because she didn't want to waste her tears. And she would capture them, whether they were tears of joy or tears of sorrow. Here, what David is using it for is this image to show us that God records every one of our sorrows, that nothing is wasted. But as I was thinking about this, I started thinking, what if it was so much more? You see, we look at it as, man, this is God caring for me deeply, that he knows the pain and the sorrow. He knows my joys that I'm associating with. But listen to this. In Luke chapter 7, verse 36 through 39, we read this. Then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house, and he sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears, and wiped them with her hair, the hair on her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. Now, when the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, they spoke to him, saying, "This man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner." She didn't have time to run back and get her tear jar, did she? But those tears of sorrow fell on the feet of her Savior. And when they were mixed with oil, became a beautiful description of our worship. You see, our tears are kept in a bottle. Why? Because it's those very hurts, it's those very joys that God could use to mingle with his oil to become an act of worship to the God who loves us. He doesn't remember them just so that he could say, "I know them." He gives value to them, and he says, that's what worship is. When you pour out your joys and your sorrows mixed with the oil of the Holy Spirit at the feet of Jesus and say, "God, I trust you with all of this. Because you are merciful, I trust you." You see, faith gives us the ability to trust Jesus with the attacks on the outside, but also the grief and the joy on the inside, showing us that Jesus doesn't waste our pain, but he sees it, he embraces it, and he walks with us through it. And then he says, because of this, you can now worship me because I have been merciful to you, because I love you, because I am with you. Your faith can trust me with your pain, your sorrow, and your grief. But it also reveals that God is for us. I love that. And I don't know who needs to hear this today, but what you need to hear is this: God is for you. The third thing, and I don't think we have a slide for this one, because for some reason between the time I sent this to Isaac to make the slides, and by the time I realized it, this section disappeared. You know how frustrating that is? Anyway, gotta hate technology. I mean, love it, right? But we're gonna see, and it's not up here, so now you gotta write it down. Faith is what keeps us walking. Verse 10, "In God I will praise his word, in the Lord I will praise his word. In God I have put my trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Vows made to you are binding upon me, O God. I will render praise to you, for you have delivered my soul from death. Have you not kept my feet from failing, that I may walk before you in the light of the living?" Love that. You see, God's mercy enabled David to keep going. But before it had him keep going, notice what he kept going doing. He began to worship. You see, God's presence led to David's worship. When God shows up as merciful, we should sing songs. And it gets David to this place of confidence. And it's noted in his "I will, I have" statements. Notice what he says: "I will praise you. I have put my trust in you. I will not be afraid, and I will render my praise." That's what David said. You see, David knew that God had delivered him from death, and he kept him from failing and falling. God did this. Why? That David might keep walking. And I want you to think for a moment with me about Dora. Not Dora the Explorer. No. Dora the fish in Finding Nemo. Dory. Yes, yeah, you knew what I meant. You know, Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. Now you're going to think you're nuts, but you're not going to forget this one. Just keep walking, walking, walking. Oh, who are you? Right? But we just keep walking. You know? But let's note this. When did David keep going? It was when he was still in the middle of danger. He's like, all right, I'm not going to stay here any longer. I got to keep going. I got to keep walking. Regardless of what's going on, regardless of if I'm in danger or not, I'm going to keep walking. You see, here's what faith does. Faith anticipates what God is going to do, and it trusts God before the rescue happens. It's when we don't know the outcome that we say, God, I'm still going to trust you. Faith says, I'm going to keep moving forward while singing a new song. That's what it says. Now this gets us to Psalm 57. David in the cave. And what we're going to see in the first 4 verses is that faith is trusting Jesus with our location. It says to the chief musician set to do not destroy. I wonder what that song sounded like. You know, we have certain songs that we like when you learn to take CPR, they give you that cadence, and what they tell you now is just sing to yourself in your head, "Staying Alive," and keep to that beat. You don't have to worry about that. We got an AED in the kitchen now, so you don't have to worry about me doing "Staying Alive" on you. So, why I told you that, I have no idea. Except for somebody said, everybody's going to be tired, you got to tell some jokes this morning. So that just popped in, came out, sorry, we're going to keep going. A mikvah of David when he fled from Saul and into a cave. It could be my ADD as well, who knows. But here's what he says. Notice the similarity from chapter 56. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. For my soul trusts in you, and in the shadow of your wings I will make my refuge. Until these calamities have passed by, I will cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me. He reproaches the ones who would swallow me up. Selah. So Psalm 57 begins with the same plea for the same mercy as Psalm 56 did. Why? Because it doesn't matter what our circumstances are, we always need the mercy of God. And God is always going to be merciful. The difference is, why was David asking at this time? In chapter 56, David needed mercy to save him. But in chapter 57, what does David need? He needs God's mercy to sustain him. So what does this tell me? We need God's mercy every day to save us and to sustain us. That's why the Bible says that his mercy is new every morning. He needed mercy. Why? So that he could take refuge in God. When he says, I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until these calamities pass by. Now, the shadow of the wings, that was such temple imagery, where the cherubim were pointed with their wings touching, where, on the curtains, where when you would get inside that curtain, you would see the Ark of the Covenant with the mercy seat covered by 2 cherub with their wings touching. What temple, what tabernacle imagery. But what would it take for David to trust the Lord here? Have you thought about that? If David is pleading for God's mercy to sustain him and to be with him in every location, and if he was to experience the shadow of the wings of the cherubim, what would he have to do? He'd have to go out of the cave. He'd have to come out because light doesn't shine in a cave. And in order for there to be a shadow, there had to be light shining. He had to come out of his cave. You see, we need to understand this, that oftentimes faith requires a change of location. I've got to come out of my place of trying to deal with it And I need to position myself where the light hits the mercy seat of God and cast a shadow so big that I can take refuge in it. In verses 5 through 7, David shows us that faith is choosing to exalt God regardless of what's going on. He says, God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. What did David plead for? He pled for mercy. What did God do? He sent his mercy and his truth. He says, my soul is among lions. I lie among the sons of men who are set on fire, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongues like sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have dug a pit before me. Into the midst of it, they themselves have fallen. Selah. I don't know about you, but I picture Star Wars. And I picture Chewbacca being hungry and going to get that piece of meat that was hanging from the tree. And when he touches it, the net picks him up and picks him in the air. That's what I picture here. That's what David was living. But it wasn't like that. It was like they dug a pit and they put a net over it and they made it look so when David went, boom, down he goes. Kind of a bummer. But David understood that. He understood what was happening. He understood that people were pursuing him. He understood that his situation was dire, but yet he was still able to see the mercy of God in the midst of it. And what he shows us is that worship is a choice here. We could look around us and we could give up and throw in the towel and be like, man, it's just so hard, God, I can't do it. Or we could look above our circumstances and we could say, God, I'm going to exalt you in this place. I'm going to exalt you and lift you up above my circumstance so that I can have hope and that I can keep going. That I'm going to trust you to be my defense. And what happens when we do that? Our enemy falls in their own pit. What does that say? I'm not a devil behind every bush, but I can tell you this, Satan lost. He hasn't won. So when we feel like we've lost something, ask ourselves, what have I really lost? If Satan lost, then I haven't lost anything because God won. He is my victory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to, by faith, lift my eyes above the circumstances I find myself in, and I'm going to exalt God. You see, David, when he pens this, he's feeling like his soul is among lions. And what's interesting about lions is in Hebrew poetry, they symbolize violent rulers or enemies. That's what he felt like was all around him. That their teeth were like spears and arrows. Their tongue was a sharp sword. Meaning, what was David facing? Violence and slander. Ever been there? The key is not to try to figure out how to break the arrows or punch a lion in the mouth. No, the goal is to, God, how do I lift my eyes above these circumstances and trust you to be my defense? But you know what I found interesting? It's not just how we deal with the attacks from the outside that matter. But how do we deal with the things that we say to ourselves when we're not faced with those people? Woe is me. Again, David shows us that worship is a choice. God, it's difficult, it's tough, but I'm going to trust you, David says. It's a choice to exalt and glorify God in the face of adversity. But it's also a choice to say, God, I choose to listen to you, not what others or myself am saying about the situation. You see, today you and I are going to be constantly bombarded with violence and slander, with the voices that people are saying and what we're saying to ourselves. But if it doesn't match what God's word says, don't listen to it. You see, faith is making the choice to exalt Jesus regardless of what's going on around you. That's what David shows us. And then finally in verses 5 through 11, we'll see how faith is trusting your heart to Jesus every morning. It says, my heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing and give praise. Awake, my glory, awake, lute and harp. I will awake in the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing to you among the nations, for your mercy reaches unto the heavens, and your truth unto the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. And that's how Psalm 57 ends. He says, my heart is steadfast. That word steadfast means this. It means to be firm, be stable, and be established. What was David firm in, stable of, and established in? The mercy of God, the character of God. That's what he was founded on. That's what he understood. But what you need to understand is that's not where David's it's not where David's heart began, but that's where it ended up. David got there because he killed a giant, right? He did kill a giant. But what did he kill before he killed a giant? But a lion and a bear. So what were people that looked like lion to David? Nothing a stone couldn't take care of. Nothing the stone that the builders rejected couldn't take care of. So what caused David to shift from lament to worship? God's faithfulness during trying times. God's mercy, which was new every morning. And here's this blows me away. You see, verses 7 through 11 are also going to be repeated in Psalm 108. So David, not only does he write them here, but he kind of reflects back on them in Psalm 108. And what's even more interesting to me than that fact is this fact, that this actually, when Israel was exiled to Babylon, this became the phrase that they would embrace in their corporate worship while they were in exile. So David's testimony brought hope to those who are in exile, and it should bring hope for us today. David, as he's hiding in a cave, was thinking about the glory of God, which filled all the earth. And what I love about that is God's glory could even fill the inside of a cave. And it's what caused him to change location. You see, fear does not mean faith has failed. No, it's just an opportunity to let faith and fear collide and say, God, I'm going to trust you. It shows us that God's refuge for us is relational, not circumstantial. God wants to be with us. And what's it show us? That even when we're taking matters into our hands, drooling on ourselves, or hiding in a cave, God's story always moves towards us and us towards his glory. So, today, let's trust God when fear is overwhelming us. Knowing that God is for us, that God is merciful, and those mercies are new every morning. And keep walking. Just keep walking. Walk, walk, walk. Move forward looking up. Trusting Jesus with your location while you choose to exalt God as you trust your heart to Jesus every morning, where his mercies are new.